for all of us. It's about predicting where the consumer is going and getting half of it right.
One of the things we want to do is create ads that don't suck.
Embracing change creates great possibility.
I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today.
Today on the show, I've got Elyse Oleksak, who is the co-founder of Bantam Bagels and the recent author of A Shark Ate My Bagel. On the show today, we talk about her rocket ship ride as an entrepreneur and co-founder of Bantam Bagels. Talk about when did they actually know they had something real? And we talk about the journey that she's been on since the acquisition, since the shutdown, et cetera, of Bantam Bagels in her recently authored book, A Shark Ate My Bagel. We also talk about the Shark Tank experience and how that changed everything for them, and much more. You do not want to miss this episode with Elyse Oleksak. Well, Elyse, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm excited to talk all things bagels, but before we get into that, I've had, oddly, a number of athletes on the show, but I don't think I've ever had a lacrosse player, and a Division I lacrosse player at that. So I'd love to hear what the experience of playing Division I lacrosse meant to you and what you took away from it as you went into the rest of your career.
So I've always been a competitive person and always just, I don't know, brightened by the prospect of a physical challenge. Some people have it in their bones. And I think a lot of that actually planted seeds or founded the beginning of really even my entrepreneurial mindset and experience, which was hustling, working as a team, right, relying on others in order to accomplish a goal, and literally working your butt off, no matter how physically or mentally demanding it may be, to achieve a common goal. So yeah, I went and played lacrosse at Columbia University. I wound up getting recruited because I really wanted to. It was like the first goal I ever had set my sights on. I played on a high school team at a public high school, and I just started looking around and seeing if you wanted to be recruited to play in college somewhere, you've got to get on the regional teams. You've got to start doing summer camps at the colleges you want to go to. You've got to be on the tournament teams. And so I just figured it out one step at a time, one tournament at a time, one coach I met at a time, and performed my best in front of all the coaches I cared about with the colleges I wanted to go to, and learned truly along the way as we met people and as we met coaches, which again, directly mirrors the approach that I took and in building the company as well. I just think that sports are such an amazing analogy for real life. And clearly I lifted and shifted the approach to even getting on the team, to balancing in college. When you're a Division I athlete, they expect you to dedicate at least minimum 8 hours a day to your sport. So that means team meetings, that means practice, that means going to the weight room, traveling across state lines during finals. It doesn't matter. Like, you're there, so you're on the team almost as a job first, and then you squeeze your classes and everything else in. So learning how to balance those two certainly helped the future as well. And of course, the concept of getting on the end line and sprinting until you puke. That's something that not everybody has experienced doing. But when you're on a D1 team, especially lacrosse, which is basically like track with a stick in your hand, when your team isn't performing, you literally all get on the end line and you sprint until somebody pukes. So was that, like, I've always carried that in my back pocket, as I've done this before. I've hustled harder. I've hurt worse. I can do this when, facing the battles in the business world.
Yeah. My daughter's playing high school basketball. I don't know that she's Division I. She has aspirations to do that, but her AAU or travel coach sent around this video, which I think epitomizes exactly what you're just talking about, was the Duke university's women's head basketball coach, and she has this talk that she's giving. I'll dig it up and send you a link on YouTube, but it was we do hard better. Right when you think it's getting easy, we're going to make it harder. Right when we can make it harder, we're going to make it even harder. And it was just this notion of it's never going to be easy. You just have to get better at doing hard things, essentially.
That's amazing. See, that's the kind of stuff that inspires me, and it always has. And when you're trained and conditioned with that mindset, then come the real world and staring at the ceiling, wondering if you're going to survive the next day of your business. You're like, I face this level of stress and cliffhanging, and I can't give up. I know how to not give up, basically.
Right.
Not that the solution. You don't know solutions just by being an athlete, but you know how to not give up.
Exactly. Let's talk about your path to entrepreneurship and co-founding Bantam Bagels. Where'd you get your start in your career after school? But then how did bagels fit in?
Like many, it was a little bit of a windy road finding what interested me. And I began actually in advertising on the ad exec side. So I actually learned a lot that helped in the Bantam days about just the ad industry, the marketing world. I went from there to Morgan Stanley because I had some interest in that as well. And I needed more than like $20 a week to live off of. I then learned about corporate America from that. I can't say I loved it or I was meant for the world of finance, but I learned so much about politics, corporate America, how the rest of the world works, which was absolutely invaluable for Bantam as well, because when it came to presenting to big companies like Starbucks or QVC or companies that were more ingrained, less fast paced and innovative and more just ingrained, knew who my audience was, what their expectations were, what their requirements were. So it certainly gave me a leg up in being able to present and fit in that. I was at Morgan Stanley until my husband and I were both sort of feeling like we weren't quite settled or on our career paths. I went to NYU to pursue a personal and career coaching degree, thinking I love people, I love connections. Maybe I could be a coach. He, in his mind, just became the idea guy and just started coming up with idea after idea every week. I got it. So we were young, married together in the city. And it was at that juncture where you have that, not quarter life crisis, but you start saying, okay, what am I really doing here? We're not just going out to bars and we're done with college. What are we really doing? It was within that time period that Nick had this dream in the middle of the night. And he wrote it down on his phone for real, in a note that said tater tot truck, all different flavor of sauces, all different flavored tater tots. He calls me and says, I've got it, tater tot truck. And I was like, next idea. Okay, I have a second one. And he said, mini bagels with cream cheese inside, like Dunkin' Donuts, but not a donut. And make it a bagel, make it an amazing New York City bagel. I don't know. I leaned in at that moment. It was one of those flash of genius light bulb moments where you just say yes. You're like, that's it. I feel that idea. I love it. I want that personally. I think you genuinely have to love something. It has to resonate with you if you're going to dedicate your life to it. At that point, we didn't know we were going to dedicate our lives to it, but we certainly knew we had this sort of itch. And we went home and started making bagels that night. And our recipe came from Googling how to make a bagel. And we just made batch after batch, hundreds. Every single night, it was like grocery store, make dough, have it sit in the laundry closet to proof overnight. And we tried all sorts of different ways to make the dough taste like a real New York City bagel. And we were researching. We had no idea how to do it. We found ourselves in the East Village, or it was the Lower East Side one day, searching through like industrial kitchen stores, coming up with ketchup pumps and turkey basters. Like, how are we going to get the cream cheese inside though? Like, we truly knew nothing. And as nuts as that sounds, I genuinely, I think that not knowing anything actually worked in our favor because my friend Melissa Bernstein, was the founder of Melissa and Doug Toys, and she's become a genuine friend and real mentor of mine. And she always says, the people who know how it's done aren't going to be the innovators because they're just going to keep doing the way that it's always been done, right? The people who have no idea are going to go backwards, upside down, triangular, you name it. And they're just going to find a way to fit a square peg into a round hole because they don't know any other way. So everything is inventing in the most creative way possible. So we truly knew nothing and we just invented from our minds from scratch, from our passion of this idea. Eventually, we wound up making a really good bagel. Like it was really good. And we started bringing it in to our office jobs and people were like going wild. That was when we started this like creative itch turned into, oh my God, this could be something real. And it was at the time when Shark Tank had just emerged and the idea of being an entrepreneur was new and sexy and interesting. It never really been like a career path that you would pursue from Columbia or from wherever you're coming from. But Shark Tank definitely brought entrepreneurship to the limelight and made it look sexy and exciting and gave it attention. So it was then that we were like, all right, if not now, when? If not us, who? Somebody's going to take this idea. It's too simple. It's too obvious. And we got to do it. And that was where like our feet became on fire. And we started putting business plans together, pursuing capital, opening the first store. And that's really how it started.
I love it. I love it. I have one question. How did you get the cream cheese on the inside?
So at the beginning, the first time we had success was when we used like a frosting pump, right? I don't know what the word is, but we were injecting it.
It looks like an injector almost.
One by one, painfully.
Okay. Wow. Okay. All right. And so I guess was it the moment when you were taking it to the office and people were like, I would buy these. Is that like when you knew you were onto it? You figured it out?
It was, yes, that, but truly it was the next level from that. The moment that people enjoyed it, asking for more, and then would come up behind Nick at his trading desk and say, if you make this a real business, I'll invest. So people laying out like the willingness to actually support this thing, that's when we knew. Got it.
We'll have to tell a little bit more of the story. But before we get there, I want to say congratulations on the new book, A Shark Ate My Bagel. Shark Ate My Bagel. So tell me a little bit like why this book, why now? And then I'm sure we're going to talk about the Shark Tank experience next.
Yes. So the book, A Shark Ate My Bagel, encapsulates the journey of being an entrepreneur really in today's America, which is incredibly relevant. And I think a lot of people are feeling like, how do I take control right now? It covers starting, growing, and exiting the business. And the truth is, now that I'm beyond Bantam Bagels, obviously we sold the business. I haven't worked there for a while and I felt like I wasn't done. Our journey was incredibly personal and it was really reliant on this incredible succession of connections among all walks of life, anybody who touched our business, from people who lined up down Bleecker Street before we even opened, from the first Wall Street Journal reporter who randomly said, yeah, I'll write an article on the QVC buyer who said, yes, Lori, who agreed to work with us, all these people who just took a flyer on our energy. We didn't have anything substantial. We didn't have data. We didn't have proof. We had an amazing idea in the spark of the dream. And all of these people who said yes and either bought or supported us in our dream, I just felt like those connections I wasn't done with. I needed a way to give back to those connections, to pay homage to them, to nod back to all the people who ate a bagel or said yes, and just summarize, this is how you impact our journey. This is that moment, like that line you stood in, or that time you said yes, or that crisis you bailed us out of. I to me, like the book was a dedication to that.
I love that. Well, you talked about Shark Tank before. The book is A Shark Ate My Bagel. We have to talk about Shark Tank. How did that experience go? And what was their involvement after you were on Shark Tank?
I truly believe that we had a great business and we had a great audience in New York City. Shark Tank, it's almost like every business needs some sort of like lever,
Right.
marketing lever to ultimately connect them to a wider audience in a more lasting way. And Shark Tank, I know you can understand this because you're a marketer, and it was this authentic conduit really between us and this broad audience of people who both were seeking inspiration, were following loved stories behind brands. They loved the sharks. They loved trying and exploring innovative things. And they like to root for businesses. And so aside from the incredible opportunity to work with Lori Grenier, which I could speak forever about, what's untold is the gift that you get of this connection with the Shark Tank audience. And that truly became, I hate to deduce it to like a marketing lever, but it really became what we then developed every single facet of our brand around. So for example, like we were able to put the Shark Tank seal on our packaging to remind people when we're up against Eggos and Jimmy Dean in the freezer aisle, they're like, oh yeah, that was on Shark Tank. I remember. Or when we're pursuing a Starbucks deal, the people who work at Starbucks saying, oh my God, I saw you on Shark Tank. My family loves watching this show. Like they were rooting for us. They were rooting. So not just the reminder of like a press tag, but something where it's, you saw me sweat as a pregnant lady in front of the sharks and you saw me get that deal. And now you're a part of helping us move forward. And when we aired, people coming back, I talk a lot about calamities and we'll get to that later. But when we launched, or I guess when our first Shark Tank pitch first aired, our website crashed, like with every like ounce of every part of our business on the line. We failed, like tragically, and nobody could access or purchase the inventory that we had invested every single dollar we had in. And we were like, that's it. We're literally, that's it for our business. On the pinnacle moment that we got, like this big Shark Tank airing, we're gone. And the amazing thing was the Shark Tankers came back. They want to root for you. They want you to succeed. So they come back. And again, like, so informed by that moment, that's when Nick and I said, we got to open the kimono. People want the story and they want the people. So let's give them more of that. Let's allow them in. We started doing lots of social media with our kids or press with our kids. We would do tours with a Bantam mobile where Nick and I would fly around the country and make sure we actually went there personally. We realized people care. When we got into Starbucks, realizing the way that people cared and people were connecting because of Shark Tank, Nick and I had a baby our first child who was a baby at the time. We actually visited 550 Starbucks with him because we were like, wow, people care about the people. Okay. So that's how we really developed the brand, informed by that moment and relationship that I guess was initially founded by Shark Tank. So we really have them to thank for that wonderful connection and authentic connection with that audience.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And the book is really a to your point, it's like your entire journey, starting, growing, exiting the business. I think it's chapter 4. It's 2 pages. You list the major lessons you learned. And I would love to have you share a couple of those and we can chat about them a little bit.
Yeah. And they all are connected with stories throughout the journey. So if you do read the book, I outline my lessons learned, and then the fun part is like seeing how they are woven within the growth and development and exit of a business. And I think you could probably guess that a lot of it is about hustle and hard work and taking on risk. But the two that really mean the most to me is the first, that human connection is truly the driving force to all success. And to me, that's so important to call out because I think we overuse the word networking sometimes in business, where it's more like card swapping, right? Like you're like, show up to the event, swapped a few cards, great, I networked. But that doesn't really truly move the needle. What I mean by connection is giving more than you expect to get in return. An example of that is our relationship with Lori Grenier. We knew she had a whole host of entrepreneurs that she was working with and assisting. And so we're like, how do we stand out? And we do that. We always did that by always first asking her, what can we do for you? You're on QVC this week. What can we do? Can we come in and, I don't know, help with anything? Can we share notes with your stage team? Can we market your airings on social media? What do you have going on for Shark Tank? Can we support it with our email list? And these are little things, but the more and more that we offer, the deeper our relationship became and the more genuine it feels. Ultimately, when push comes to shove and you really need something and you actually have to ask for a favor, you can. And it's important to be giving without the expectation of getting in return or, okay, just wait for that big favor. So I would say like that connection, I talked to you about the connection with the Shark Tank audience, but the connection goes in all directions, including up with the mentors and people like Lori Grenier, and sideways, people who you're working with. For example, like your co-manufacturer or your email provider or your internet service provider or like your website provider, whoever's working for you in that sideways relationship, the lateral relationship is sideways. That being equally as connective and not just seeing them as just whatever, a vendor, but trying to help them out, learning their story, seeing what makes their business tick and how they could use you to improve their business before thinking of how badly you need them. So that to me was that business is nothing but a series of connections, was an incredibly important learning point for me during my journey. But the true roller coaster of our journey is probably encapsulated by the lesson that true success exists symbiotically with failure and it cannot exist without failure. I think a lot of people just hope and want and seek out like that hockey stick trajectory. There's a lot of bumps in the road and setbacks. And that's, I think, probably why we began here by talking about being an athlete and getting on the end line and sprinting, but the willingness to absorb the failures and the setbacks. And it's very real. And in my book, I did my best to show just how raw and just how devastating and just how real setbacks are. Like the challenges are one after another. And when you read one story, I'll outline something amazing that happened only to open the next door to the next calamity. Everything is like a whirl of ups and downs. And that's really the life we live. And I hope that it becomes supportive and like something that can be relatable to most entrepreneurs or marketers, and realize that just because you have a major calamity, failure, devastating moment in business, nothing's over.
This notion of I fail every day so I can succeed when it counts is like the message I'm getting.
I love that. And the truth is that when we market and when we do press, we tend to only share or highlight the victories and the sexy stuff because that's what people want to read. And that's awesome. And that is inspirational. But it is important to just acknowledge that success doesn't happen for anyone just in its entirety. It doesn't exist without failure.
Yeah, no, it definitely rings true for me. And you already highlighted you getting on Shark Tank, and then when the episode comes out, the website crashes. Like that notion of these things coexist. I can only imagine you've got like example after example.
Basically every chapter is an example like that. And you see the way that we succeed and then we fail and then we just barely inch ahead in our next success. And then we fail again. And then we just inch further right forward and before the next failure. And those are things like, oh God, these stories, I could start to have anxiety just reminding myself of them. But getting in our first grocery store, can't believe it, reinventing our entire co-manufacturing line, spending almost $100,000 on new equipment to package it up and figuring out, doing the testing on the shelf life, frozen, getting frozen trucking, learning about the requirements to be in a grocery store from a health inspection and different perspective, and what does it take and to market in the grocery store, investing in their coupons and their magazines and you name it, entirely reinventing an arm of business from scratch, shipping that product out, this teeny tiny order of, I don't know, 10 cases, and flying ourselves, my sister-in-law, the baby, all of us across country, all the way to San Francisco just to see it in person. We can't believe this triumphant moment. Running into the grocery store, running down the aisle and finding our bagels in an ambient bakery section, not frozen, moldy, wet.
Oh no. Oh.
The dagger. And then the moment we realized that it was our fault, we never actually asked the buyer where this would be placed. He was the bakery buyer after all. We were so carried away with the excitement and this opportunity. We hadn't even asked, will this be in the freezer? So that is another one.
Hopefully you made it into the frozen section not too long after that.
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
Oh, we did. And we never didn't ask again, right? So,
yeah, right.
But why it helped us inch ahead was because then this buyer told us, if you want to get in more grocery stores, there are these trade shows that we all go to. And he recommended the best one, the one that he knew that he and his colleagues were going to be showing up at. And it was from that he felt so bad. We felt so bad. He ended up vouching for us at that show and introducing us to a buyer. And lucky for us, he vouched for us as vendors who followed through, as their bagels are so good, and reminding everyone they need to go in the frozen section. And because of that experience, we actually had the entire infrastructure set up, like trucking and the line and the packaging, so that when the next opportunity arose, we could pounce immediately.
I love that. And that brings you back to that other one, the human connection, the fact that like you guys genuinely had a human connection, maybe a faulty connection, but a deep one at that. And the trust, I guess, that if you overcome it, right, like you guys did, the trust that engenders in other people is pretty amazing.
And let me tell you, like, getting through that mistake wasn't easy, because it meant we then hit the streets. We spent an entire week going from store to store, because this was a Safeway, and begging managers to throw out all of the product, which we promised to pay for, and getting with them in back rooms in their offices and literally begging them to reorder it and tell them that we're good for it. We promise you can get it. Just make sure when it comes in, you put it in this spot. Getting corporate to agree to a placement in the freezer, which again is really hard because every single inch of the grocery store is spoken for. So convincing them to make space for us. And so they saw that we were willing to follow through and not just give up. Like, we pounded the pavement. We went to every single store. And then a week later, back in New York, we called every store again to make sure they had gotten what they needed and that it was in the right place.
I love it. You've had such a story with this venture, the ups and the downs, etc. If you're thinking about giving just some top level advice for budding entrepreneurs that might be listening to this episode, or people who might be working for an entrepreneurial business, like, what advice would you have to tell them?
I do think remembering the humanity behind every business, I think especially for marketers, that might be the most challenging thing right now, because a good marketer, anybody who's listening to you, I'm sure, is data driven, probably follow the numbers. I guess what I would offer is that when we were really clicking, really truly exploding, we were following the connections rather than following the numbers. And I think that like anytime a new app or a new social media arises, remember when Instagram first came out, nobody had data or metrics to follow. They were following the hype of this new app and it was so cool. And I'm trying out these crazy, weird photos of my life. And then I'm putting it up there and I'm just having these genuine captions and just, it's all weird and authentic. And even when Snapchat was first invented, that's how it really just skyrocketed. So when those kernel of like things skyrocket and just get under people's skin, it tends to be more like it hits their humanity rather than hitting, oh, okay, the algorithm got me 7 times. I'm ready to buy it now. I think when you're looking to really create a unicorn, there's always like that X factor that doesn't hit the metrics, that hits people as people first.
I love that. One of the things we love to do on this show is to get to know you a little bit better. We know you've got this athletic background, this drive. You've had this incredible entrepreneurial experience. But my favorite question to ask everyone that comes on the show is, has there been an experience of your past that defines or makes up who you are today?
Yes, I love that question. Aside from everything that you already know, I think one of the most influential experiences that I've ever had was living for a semester in Costa Rica, in a town with no electricity, like some running water, but mostly we would like filter it ourselves and boil it. And working on a farm, working with the Ticos every morning to mix cement or help refurbish their 1-room building that we called the community center, and then spending every afternoon with them playing soccer out on the farm, to me was so highly influential, not just because of the exposure to the world and just how beautiful people can be everywhere, but learning from them just how to problem solve so creatively. We had very little at our disposal by way of materials, or I'm sure you and me and everybody listening to this podcast is ordering whatever they need off Amazon like once a day. But
Exactly.
When this farm village in the hills in Costa Rica, there was no Amazon and they had one store that sold like 4 things. So one day this was part of the community project to refurbish the community center, and the center had no windows. So we're making windows and we ran out of wood. And so the Ticos, they just said, all right, vamos. So we just followed them. Everybody grabbed a machete, like an axe machete. I followed because I trusted them. They were really nice people. And we went into the forest, the rainforest, and they just climbed trees with no harness or anything and started chopping down trees. Finally, I got the hint of what was going on. So they start chopping down trees, creating an assembly line. People were passing the branches down. The assembly line is skinning off the bark, smoothing it out, then until we have this beautiful pile of wood, like just gleaming, gorgeous, smooth wood. We marched it down as one by one. We marched it down to the community center. We sized it, sawed it, fit it, and created windows out of it. They didn't have enough wood, and that's how they solved it. And I just thought that was so cool. And the truth is, in business and marketing, like with the amount that we need to change and we need to problem solve every single nanosecond, I think that learning how to just think on your feet, problem solve, assess like your environment. What do we have available? Where are we? Who's our audience? What do we have? And how can we solve this now? I learned from the Costa Ricans.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that example. If you were starting this journey all over again, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, my book already has all the advice in a nice, neat little bow. But the truth is, I don't know that I don't have any regrets. I don't know that I should have known more. I don't know that it would have been really nice to have a friend. The book almost shows you the ups and downs by way of showing you like this is what everybody goes through and you can solve and you can handle. But I love that my husband and I were green when we started the business, because again, I think that's where the most creativity came out in developing the business. So that's how I'll answer that.
Oh, awesome. No, that's good. That's good. You are on a marketing show, so I have to ask you a couple marketing questions. Is there a topic that you think marketers need to be learning more about, or it could be just something that you're trying to learn more about yourself?
Yes. So I believe wholeheartedly in connection and the human beings that we're talking to and selling to or marketing to. I think that AI is an interesting mechanism to I guess it brings marketing to a micro level, right? Like a personalization in micro. It's really interesting to me. I'm watching it really closely. I think there's nothing more important than that micro connection and the personalized marketing. But also there's a balance, because people don't want to feel or think that they're being watched or feel like they're talking to a computer. So I don't have anything like sage to conclude yet, but that is something that I think is going to be the most important tool for marketers to use and to use correctly moving forward. Yeah.
No, I think that I agree with you. There's tremendous power in AI, and generative AI in particular is one microcosm of it to get to personalized content. But I totally agree. You need to make sure that humanity is not lost in the deployment of machines.
And you know what? And just not even talking about machines, but in general, people call bullshit really well. Like really, people know when you're faking authenticity and when you're giving it for real. And 100%. I think that goes from me and Nick, like on a new show and just like actually being real, all the way through to a computer talking to you. So I think whatever it is, I think people don't like BS. And so that's got to be maintained. Like the realness needs to be maintained.
Agree 100%. Are there any like trends or subcultures that you're following now, or you think other people should take notice of?
Oh, I don't know. I think that's the big thing, that everybody is now adding AI into their business.
Yes. No, it is.
That's the thing I've been watching. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely the number one topic. and it goes into so many different directions to our earlier point. It's not just one thing.
From a marketing perspective, you say to yourself, it's so easy to say, oh my God, wow, what a dream. This is so easy. I could just plug this in here, plug this in there. So it's one of those things where when you begin marketing with it, it seems like so exciting and easy, but you could get carried away and then just completely dilute like the authentic experience.
Yeah. Well, last for you, what do you see as the largest opportunity or threat facing marketers today?
Oh, God. And you know what? This is so easy for me to answer, because this was probably one of my biggest challenges, was the speed of change. When it comes to marketing, keeping up with culture change is insane. I went in the span of 6 years. I went from everybody's on Facebook to Instagram's being invented, all the way through to Instagram is no longer a thing. Nobody is on it. Right. And it's just when you think you've nailed a technique or you've built a platform, everything changes. So I think just for a marketer, that's probably the biggest threat, like constantly keeping up with how people want to be spoken to, how people want to purchase, under what medium do they want to buy, under what's the tone of voice? Is it cool to, I don't know, like the jargon that you like, constantly keeping up with the way things look, feel, and sound. It's really difficult.
I 100% agree, and we'll leave it there. Elyse, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. And for those listeners out there, go buy the book. Hi, it's Alan again. Marketing Today was created and produced by me with post-production support from Sam Robertson. If you're new to Marketing Today, please feel free to write us a review on iTunes or your favorite listening platform. Don't forget to subscribe on marketingtodaypodcast.com. Tell your friends and colleagues about the show. I love hearing from listeners. You can contact me at marketingtodaypodcast.com. There you'll also find complete show notes and links to what was discussed in the episode today, and you can search our archives. I'm Alan Hart, and this is